All right, let's get started. Just gonna let this thing build. It's taking an unusually long time. Oh, yep. Just comment that out for a second. There we go. Looks like it's working this time. Yeah, and for anyone watching, I'm just kind of going to be working a bit on our weapon system as well as our network replication. But if you have questions about anything at all, feel free to ask them in the chat. And if I know anything about it, I will tell you everything I know and kind of do a little demonstration. So to start, we can kind of look at what we already have working. And so yeah, currently we have a character. He can move, jump, he can sprint. If you press control, he can crouch, move around while crouched. Currently pressing Z will equip a weapon. And then if you hold down right click, you will aim down sight. And left click is attack. So things that are and aren't working. Turn this down just a smidge. So we have basic ammo working, basically. There you go. So he ran out of ammo, but he's still continuing to play the firing effect. But you'll notice now if I let go and try to attack, he can't shoot anymore, and currently there's no way to reload. So we need to add those two functionalities in. So let's get started. So when I originally tried to build, I had a compiling error right here. And that there should fix that issue. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, yeah, so it looks like that worked. So currently how reload is set up, when you hit the function, the reload key, it'll call this start reload method. It'll check to make sure it can reload. You know, we might have certain parameters where you can't reload while sprinting. So this could be a number of things. We'll set the weapon state to reloading. We'll get the animation duration. And then we're going to set 2 timers, one for the stop reload and the other one for the actual reload. And basically, these are going to be called at different durations. So this one's going to be called at the end of the animation. And this one is going to be called just a little bit right before the end. So we're doing a max between these two numbers, which is going to be the animation duration minus 0.1. Whoops. Which will most likely be greater than 0.1. So that's when the actual reload will happen, which is when we'll set the current number of rounds to the max number of rounds. And then after the animation is completely done playing, we're going to return the weapon to an idle state. So that's the gist of it. Things we need to make sure we have working is we got to go all the way back to the player controller. Psych, just joking. To the input component for the character input. And so it looks like he has a reload method already. So let's check that out. Okay, so reload. Okay, so it looks like that is all set up correctly. Let's double check in the character to make sure that it is handling the reload function correctly. Okay. So that should do it. We should add the can checks in here, even if it's just stubbed in for the time being. And it looks like I haven't made one yet, so I'll just whip that up real quick. And put it right around here. Okay, we'll define that method. Come over here. Let's see. I think I put it right around here. And I guess currently the only thing we'll want to check is if the character and the character controller. Oh, and the current. Okay, yeah, this is actually pretty good. Stub. So we'll make sure the character, the controller, and the weapon are not null. So this will basically prevent if I try to reload while my character is dead or the weapon is destroyed or currently set to null, it won't get a null pointer exception. So then we'll just come in and add that method call in here. I talked about this a little bit last time, but these static can classes, I like them. I like to also make them static because it just makes them easier to use anywhere, as well as I feel like it also is pretty easy to read. This basically reads, if the XL character can reload, then do it. So kind of, it reads well. It's easy to understand. And then this doesn't get all convoluted with a ton of logic of if the character is currently able to reload or not. All right, now let's take a look at the weapon. Okay, so this is the base weapon class. How we currently have it split up is there's the base weapon, and then it branches from there to like melee and ranged weapons. So as you can see, haven't really worked at all on melee weapons. So we're currently just focusing on getting guns working first. So the parent class doesn't do anything because, you know, a melee weapon may not need to be reloaded. So it does nothing, and then it just gets passed onto the child. So it's going to call this right here, start reload. It's going to check if the weapon can reload, and we kind of already went through this, so I won't go through it again. That seems to be everything, so let's see if it compiles. Build air. Oh. Typo. Okay, one of the first things we're going to want to do is project settings, go down to input. We're going to add an action. And this will probably be R because that's how most games have it set. Okay. Just double checking this is called reload and not something else. Okay. Now the next thing we're going to want to do is get an animation for reload. To me, or these look exactly the same. So it's just how he returns it. I think we'll just start with this one. So what we want to do is create. Okay, I'm not 100% sure if I'm back online. Let me double check real quick. Okay. So yeah, looks like it's looks like I'm working again. So yeah, we're creating an animation montage, and we're just going to call this reload. And then we're going to want to find the reload rifle hip animation. Throw that in there. Play it. Boom. Save that. Come down to, we got to find our weapons, character weapons, gun, and this is our only gun currently. So we're going to come down to the weapon animations, and we can see we have melee, reload, loot animations, equip, unequip, and we're just going to want to set this to reload. We can actually check if we have any reload sounds. I don't know if I do. Yep, I don't currently. I can get some, but we'll worry about that later. It's not super complicated how to do the reload. Oh, wait. It's already set. It just was in a different location. Okay. So I set the reload animation. We should be good to go. Let's just give it a test, see what happens. Okay, I pressed R, nothing happened. It's playing the sound. Looks like we gotta debug it. And this is probably annoying, so I'll just comment out the printing. So yeah, let's see what's going on. Why is it not playing the weapon animation? I gotta reload it because I commented out that section of code. I think I might have figured out what the problem is. We'll see. So I'm thinking the issue is in the animation montage we just made. Huh. Let's try it out again. Set the weapon state to reloading. It's coming in here. Duration. It's coming into the character to actually play the animation. Playing the animation montage. And the duration set to 2 seconds. Seems about right. And we play the weapon sound. Interesting. Okay, we're out of ammo. Press R. Oh, looks like it actually worked. Just didn't play the animation. All right, we have a question. Have you had a problem with materials in your meshes breaking and not importing? I haven't had a ton of problems. Usually when my meshes aren't showing up, it's usually a file location reference error, which means that somehow the file got moved or the pointer to the mesh got messed up somehow, or yeah, the material, and then the mesh can't find it anymore. Those are the issues I've experienced, but yeah, I might need a little more info to be able to kind of help you out with that one more. A way you can check is, if I go down to, let's find my gun. I go to my mesh, and in my mesh I should be able to see the material. I can then navigate to it. I would open up the material and make sure there's no compiling errors. So it'll try to compile. compiling shaders can take a long time, so. Okay, so yeah, as you can see, if you open up the material and it compiles, and now you can kind of see it here in this preview window, you can then know that the issue is not with the material itself, and it's probably more of an issue of how the material is being referenced. So that can kind of narrow it down. If this view is good, then I would probably come back to this one, reset that variable, and then try to re-navigate to your gun mesh, which, you know, I probably should have remembered what it was called. And then reset it. Make sure it looks good. Yeah, so hopefully that answers your question or kind of gives you an idea of how to maybe debug the problem. Let me know if you have more specific needs, and we can talk about some more. Okay, so we were working on the reload, and for some reason our animation's not playing. My first guess would be is this default group. So I'm going to make a little tangent and kind of show you guys a few things. The shooter game's a good example for this one. We'll wait for this to build. Yeah, the first time you build a project, it can sometimes take a little bit longer. So that's always fun. Okay, so what I wanted to show you is, let's go to the third person perspective. No, none of these. Here we go. So animation montages. I don't claim to be an expert in this area. My understanding is pretty surface level, but it's been enough for me to get by. So the montage is a really powerful object for building animations. You can get by with just using the basics of it, which is what we'll be kind of focusing on tonight. So what you'll notice here is he has his equip animation in the bar, but then they also have over here these default groups. And he has one for upper body and full body. So these groups, you can see create them over here. They correspond to, we're going to want to find the animation blueprint for the third person's perspective. So you can see he's got the upper body slot here and then the full body. So we're going to be doing something very similar to this. What currently is happening is the state machine is, and if you guys don't know what the state machine is all about, ask and I can go into in more detail. But the state machine is putting out a state of an animation to play. Now it's going to apply an additive, which is going to be this aim offset. So basically it's going to adjust, for example, the running animation to be looking in the direction that you're aiming. So it's going to apply that additive, and then it's going to cache that state or that pose in something called normal movement. And caching is useful. When we get back to our project, I can kind of show you how we use caching, how it helped us out. But you can see that they're using the cache pose or normal movement, and just the base of the cache is being set as this base pose. And then they are going to blend per bone, and then they are taking the cache pose again of normal movement, and then they're going to play the animation for upper body. And so, as you can see here, this animation only targets the upper body, which basically means when you play it in here, it's going to change just the upper body bones to play, while all the other bones are just going to be doing their normal base thing. And then that's going to then go into the full body pose, which is going to controls all of the bones. So certain animations may be a full body animation. For example, I bet this dying one is full body. Yeah. So the full body animations will override the upper body ones. If, say, you're reloading and then you die, this one will then take over and play the death animation for the whole body. So that's the gist of it. We're going to try to do the same exact thing in our project. So let's jump back over. Okay. Now, let's go back and find our reload animation. Call this upper body. I'm going to add another one. We're going to call it full body. Okay. So I know there is a step I am missing. Okay, we're going to want to also open up our animation blueprint. Okay, so here's our animation blueprint. It's similar to the one in the shooter game, but, ooh, wait, no, that should be fine. Anyway, so basically what we're doing is we're getting the state from the state machine. And unlike normal blueprint nodes, you can't pull off multiple edges or connectors from these poses. And so as you can see down here, I wanted to have a different aim offset for if I was doing iron sight or had my weapon at my hip. And so they both need this pose, but I can't pull two of them. So by caching it, I can then access this pose in two different places. So that's basically what the caching is used for. And here I am blending by whether they're aiming or not. So things that I think we are going to need to do to get this working is I think we're going to have to do that apply additive node. Let's see, now I'm all lost. Okay, so yeah, before we do that, actually, let's think about this real quick. We are caching this one. I'm going to rename this to pre-aim offset. Okay, and then this is going to go into the apply additive. And we're going to get okay, so as you can see, like in this example, we're doing the same thing. We had to add an extra step because we have two different aim offsets. So we are now currently here. So let's go back here. We're going to apply the additive, and then we're going to want to cache again. And we'll call this, let's call it normal movement like they did, until I can think of a better name. Okay, so now normal movement. we're going to want to blend. What's this one was? Layered blend per bone? That doesn't sound quite right. Oh, I guess it is. Layered blend per bone. Okay, and again, we're going to want to grab normal movement. See, I'm missing a step with these groups. It's the one where you create the group or the slot. When in doubt, Google it out. U4, create, and in montage, slot. So yeah, you can kind of see here that the animation montage is quite a bit more complex than how we're using it. Okay, so this is the information we need to know. Interesting. Out of curiosity. Okay, just wondering. So they're creating a new group. Set slot rotation group to an additive layer. Oh, I see. I see what they're doing. Here we go, upper body. I still need to figure out how to define what bones the upper body belongs to, but we'll get there. We'll get there in a second. And then this is going to go into full body, and then we're going to play it. Yep, so as you notice, this guy completely broke. He's just a mess. And that's because these slots aren't defined. And that's the step I don't remember how to do. Okay, let's see if we can jump to the good stuff. Yeah, I think this is the video that initially taught me how to do it. But I'm a little rusty, so I'm going to have to get a refresher. Oh, that's right. So
Expand this, you'll see branch filters. This is how you're determining where you're blending animation to. We're going to add one entry to this. And the bone name we're going for is spine01. Of course, you can check that out by going over to any of the other tabs that have a skeleton list. And you'll see it's spine_01. You want to get that exact. So here we'll just type that in. We'll say spine_01, press enter, and everybody's now happy. Now, this won't work. We've set this up exactly the way we should, but the problem is this. Our slot node requires a source. Before, we had the...
Okay, so that was a step I'm missing. You know, to me, it actually does seem a little bit weird that this is where it's done, but who am I to judge? This needs to be spine_01. So that should blend it in the right spot. Set this to upper body. Yikes. Alright, hold on to your butts, everyone. Yeah, I don't even know what's happening right now. So yeah, this is definitely not what we want. So let's go back to our animation graph, see what's going on. Like for example, if we just did this, interesting. We might be onto something. Troubleshooting the real issue. So let's, for example, or just for kicks and giggles, let's simplify this down a little bit to get to look more like the shooter example and see if we can't figure it out. Okay, so they're going from the state machine straight into the supply additive. And this additive is actually a blend space player. Oh, interesting. Yeah, they're not using aim offset, they're using a blend space. That might not be the correct node for us. Yeah, so in case I was kind of just mumbling over everything that I kind of just figured out right there. The shooter example, they don't actually use the aim offset asset as far as I remember. They use something, they use a blend space. Yep. So, let's see, blend space. So yes, a blend space. They're very similar. and what they do, basically inputs change. Okay, sorry, got disconnected again. Don't know why that's happening. But as I was saying, we're actually using an anim offset or aim offset asset, whereas the shooter example is using a blend space. So because of those differences, we may have to do our animation blueprint differently. Meaning we probably can't use the apply additive. We are probably, yeah, because if I just move this straight into here, that should be working again. Play, boom, he's back alive. Okay, so what we need to do is, what if we want to cache normal movement. Boom. And there we go. It's working. Huzzah. So yeah, basically, things to note that we did was, because we're using the aim offset, we didn't have to do that apply additive node. We can move straight into caching the normal movement. And then we're going to do a layer blend by node and just play the upper body animation. And we're going to blend that with just a normal animation. So then, and that's going to then move into our final state. So the reason why we want to do it that way is, if I'm standing here, I have to press equip the weapon, and I press R, he'll play the reload animation. If I'm running and I press R, he'll still play the reload animation. If we didn't set that slot to upper body, his legs would stop and he would be sliding around while doing the reload. So now this way you can even reload and jump, and the upper body will play a completely separate animation from the lower body. So as far as our weapon goes, it's pretty close to done. What I will be interested in now is to see what stuff is currently working or being replicated over the network. It's definitely not. Ah, dang it. Let's see if I can recover. Boom, recovered. I'm going to do 2 pop-out windows. This might make it easier. There we go. So we're going to run over here. Let's see what stuff is being replicated across the network. So currently, it looks like the sprint animation is, as you can see if I run by, he does play the sprint. One interesting thing is Yeah, his looking is kind of off. If you can tell in the upper right corner. From the server's perspective, he's looking directly at the client, but he's kind of looking off to the side according to what the client sees. So that's one thing that we'll have to look into. Let's do jump. The jump animation seems to be working. Crouch seems to be working. If I equip a weapon, unfortunately that did not look like it worked. Let's kind of see here. So the client can jump, and that's replicated. Okay, see, crouching doesn't replicate from client to server, so that's something we'll have to look into. The interesting thing here is the client's rotation is actually working correctly. Boom, boom, boom. So let's hop into the code and see have a look at it all. Save the selected. Okay, so the basics of networking and replication in Unreal are pretty simple. Let's see if I can find an example of stuff I've already done. Okay, here's a good example. Help you get the gist of it. So I have these functions, and they're defined. They're kind of defined as server functions. So to do this, you want to add these tags up here. Reliable server with validation. We'll kind of go into this a little bit more in a bit. But what we're doing is we're setting the action state. So if we come in here, and go to set action state. So what you kind of want to happen is when the server does something, you want that to be replicated or kind of passed on to all the clients, everyone connected to the server. So there are additional checks you'll kind of want to add, because sometimes you'll be running as a dedicated server in which the dedicated server doesn't do anything and therefore doesn't worry about anything that has to do with deal with visuals. I won't focus too much on that tonight. The main thing, how we kind of have it set up right now, is for kind of like a peer-to-peer multiplayer game. So I'm hosting a game and my friends can join, and I'm the server, but I'm also playing. I'm kind of like a client too. So the gist of what's going on here is when you're setting the action state, which is, the action state's not too important, but that's kind of what is driving our animations. We're going to come in here and we're going to ask, are you the server? And so basically if your role is less than the role authority, basically means server, then we want to call the server set action state, because the client is not allowed to change his state. anything that changes or wants to be replicated, it has to be handled by the server. So before I mentioned we had that validation tag. That means you'll basically have to add this function. And so this is basically called before the implementation's called. And so this is, you can validate the request. You can check for certain things. This is probably where you would check and kind of weed out anyone who's trying to hack your game. But then after that's called, we'll move on to the implementation. And basically from here, the server is then just going to call set action state. And so then that's just going to come back in here. But now this time, the server is making this call, and it'll set the action state to the correct state. So that is basically the basic concepts of what we're trying to accomplish. Is if the client is doing it, he then wants to delegate that function call to the server. And if the server is doing it, then he's just going to do it. So let's try to get the equip weapon working. And, we'll see how it goes. Okay, so let's look at where it happens. Right here, equip weapon. Let me collapse all those down. So this is basically saying if the character weapons inventory.num is greater than 0, we're going to set the current weapon to the character weapons 0, 1 inventory, the first weapon. And then we're going to call start equip on that weapon. Okay. I think you guys understand what's going on. So a little bit of context. Character weapons is... someone kind of asked me about this a little bit earlier today in a comment on one of my YouTube videos. How the inventory kind of works. Excuse me. See if I can find it. Character weapons. Okay. Oh yeah, the weapon manager. So let's come to weapon manager. So you can kind of see I did not know my computer was a touchscreen until just now. As you can see here, we kind of have two properties. The first one is the default inventory. We're making this a U property, so it's exposed to the editor. And what we're doing is we're creating an array of this T subclass of a XL weapon. So this thing right here, this T subclass of, that basically means blueprint. So we're creating an array of blueprints of the type XL weapon. And I'll kind of explain more why we do this as we continue onward. So that is set in the editor. So as you edit the character's blueprints, you can add more and different weapons to his inventory. And then he has his actual inventory, which is just an array of weapon pointers. So if we come back to our character, he has a function called spawn inventory, in which what he's going to do is he's going to loop through that array of weapon blueprints, and we're going to spawn them and then add them into the inventory. And so as you can see here, we're taking that first weapon that was spawned, and basically we're going to attach it to our right hand. Now, another thing with spawning is spawning can only happen on the server. If you try to spawn something from the client, you're going to have all sorts of problems and it's not going to work how you want it. So, another thing to keep in mind. When you spawn something, it has to happen from the server. So, how do we want to do this? The shooter example is just full of great examples. Let's get some ideas from them. Oh, I'm in the wrong place. I want to look at the character. Interesting. Equip weapon. Boom. Here it is. So what they are doing is they're setting the current weapon. Okay. So they set the current weapon. Okay, so you'll notice here that they set their current weapon to transient, and to also, they set this meta tag here, replicate it using on rep current weapon. So this is another way of replicating. So, and this one is a little more nuance. And you can see right here on what set current weapon. So basically what that tag means is when the current weapon changes on the server, we want this function to also be called on all the clients. So when the current weapon is replicated, it's going to be replicated using that method. The reason they do it this way is there's a little bit of logic involved in setting the current weapon. And so that it needs to be called so all the clients kind of know what the new current weapon is. One other thing I want to check out real quick is the spawn default inventory. Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, you only want the server to be spawning things. So they basically said, if you're not the server, then get out of here. Let's go back to ours and just kind of make sure we're following these similar concepts. So yeah, kind of doing a little bit a similar way. I'm saying, if you're the server, go ahead and spawn the stuff. Now what we will need to do is this equip weapon. This, all right, we're going to want to do what we did with this one. This is kind of the template of all networking functions. We're going to check to see if they're the server. So if he is the server, he can go ahead and do his thing. If not, we're going to have to add one of these server functions. Yeah, kind of debating how I want to do this. I'll just kind of blaze forward, and then if I think of a better way, I'll go back and change it. But for here, we're going to say server equip weapon. And yeah, we're going to do it kind of dumb first. Then we'll come back and clean it up a little bit. Okay, so we want to copy kind of the template of these methods. I come up here to equip weapon, server, equip weapon, validate, server. Okay. And then basically here, we're going to want to just call equip weapon. So now you'll come back as the server. So this is going to be server equip weapon. Now you're going to come back as a server and be able to set the current weapon. Now, what we're going to want to do is on this current weapon, we want to add those tags that this one did had. Because we're going to now want to replicate the current weapon to all of the connected clients. And I'll just throw it right here for now. Okay, so Just throw it in here for now. Okay, I need to kind of review how exactly onRep works. Okay, because onRep current weapon is going to come back into equip weapon. Okay. So then it's going to set the current weapon. Okay, it gets set, which triggers the on replication. Huh. I'm just wondering how it determines what this so-called last weapon is. So the current weapon, this is the current weapon. Yeah, these onRep functions always kind of take me for a spin. Try to figure out how they work. So the server is calling set current weapon. So the parameter weapon is the new weapon, and the current weapon is the old weapon. Okay, so then that comes in here, and they're basically saying if the last weapon is not null, okay, meaning there was one equipped, then we're going to set this local last weapon. And then if the local last weapon is set, we're going to call on unequip. Okay, so we're going to unequip the old weapon we had. Current weapon is equal to new weapon. Last weapon. So on all the clients, it's calling set current weapon with the current weapon of that client with the last weapon. Man, it's hard to figure out. Pretty sure this will work. Just because our game is currently in a dumbed down state. The fun part. Building. Huh. Amazing. It worked our first try. Well, it compiled. Still fingers crossed for if it actually works. Okay. Play. So this is controlling the client. Okay. I press Z. Okay, so it worked. It is equipped on the server, as you can see. It is not equipped on the client. And then let me switch to the server. And it equipped it on the server, but it did not get propagated down to the clients. So it's not working how we hoped it to work. Let's check our logic. Equip weapon. If role is less than server, call it server equip weapon. Server equip weapon calls equip weapon. So one thing that the other game did is they had a set current weapon function. Alright. Maybe this is the key that we're missing. Okay, so just plain old Jane normal function. So we're going to set current weapon, and it's probably just going to take one parameter, which is going to be called the weapon. And come here. Implement this. Okay. What we're going to want to do is set the current weapon equal to this weapon parameter. So this is then going to be replaced with set current weapon. Okay, so set current weapon is going to come in here, then set the current weapon. This is a little bit of a stretch, so we'll see how this goes. Actually, I think I just figured it out. We'll try it. This is probably not going to work, but okay. Yeah, didn't work. So basically, I think the issue was I'll kind of explain it as I do it. So this was never getting called, I'm pretty sure, on the client, which is I think what the issue was. Because if you remember on the on rep, we're only setting the current weapon. We weren't actually equipping it. So I am actually going to change, for simplicity's sake, I'm not going to pass that in. I'll come here and change the definition. Whoops. Okay. So now, when this gets replicated, it'll call set current weapon, and it'll call like the whole deal. It'll set the current weapon, and then I'll also equip it. So I'm pretty sure that was the issue we were having last time. Moment of truth, y'all. Okay, yeah, that still not working. It's only happening on the server. Okay, so what I'm doing here is I'm setting the editor to run as a client. So I can now throw a breakpoint in right here. Let's go back to the game, play. So I'll now should be debugging as only the client. Yeah, because if I'd thrown a breakpoint in there before, it would have broken on both the server process as well as the client process. Makes it a little bit convoluted when debugging. But yeah, let's see how it goes. So I press Z. The role is less than the authority, so it goes to server equip weapon. Oh, yeah, that's right. That code won't get called because I'm not the server. Okay. Yeah, so it looks like this replication is not working. Which makes me think we're forgetting a step. Oh, I'm pretty sure I know what it is. If we come down and look at the shooter example, they have this method right here. Boom. Do lifetime replication current weapon. If we pop over to our code, come down to our method for, we're only replicating the action state. So that's a very important piece. Without that, the replication won't happen. And while this is building, I can kind of maybe explain a little bit of these additional parameters. So this is basically the variable you want replicated. This is the class that it belongs to. And you can throw conditions over here. So, for example, we only want this to replicate for the owner only. And that is because the server has to spawn the inventory, but all the other clients don't really care what your inventory is. That's between you and the server. So you don't want to then, be broadcasting that to every single person that's connected to the match or the game. Targeting. This one you want to skip the owner because when you for example, held right click to enter into a targeting mode, you set the targeting to be true. You already know that as the client. So you just want to then replicate that to everyone else to let them know that you're targeting now. You don't want to basically call the targeting method or setting the targeting method twice, which is what would happen if you didn't do it. This, without setting anything, this is going to replicate to everybody, which is what we want to happen because as the client, I'm not setting anything. I'm basically asking the server, hey, set my current weapon. I'm not telling him what I want my current weapon to be. I'm just saying, hey, set it for me. So he's going to set it, and then that then needs to be replicated back to me as well as to everyone else that's connected. I actually want to close that. Oh, an error. What's going on? Build. Yeah, just a general rule of networking. The general idea is you want to push as much as you can onto the clients as possible. Because if the server is doing too much, then it kind of slows down the game for everyone else. But it's a balancing act because then if you give the client too much power, you kind of open up your game to be exploited by hackers. So it is a little bit of a mix. The general rule of thumb is you don't want anything visual really being computed on the server. That's why having a state-driven game is generally a pretty good idea because if you can set the state and then the work that the server has to do is basically just setting the state and then letting everyone know what the new state is. Then from there, the client can then look at the state and then play appropriate animations or effects as needed. You're never really having the server to do any of that stuff just because it's just unnecessary load on it. So that's kind of how you should be thinking when you're trying to figure out where to split the method is basically what is the bare minimum that the server needs to do. No, this is not what I wanted. I want to turn off those advanced settings that I turned on before. I now want to run as a single process. Okay, I'm the client and I press Z. Let's kind of remove those breakpoints. Huh. Shoot, diggity dog. It's still not working. Hmm. Alright. Let's try to figure out what's going on. So I'm the client, and I press Z. I pass it to the server, and now the server says, alright, equip weapon. It comes back here. The server is now setting the current weapon, in which he comes in here, sets it, equips it, everything's hunky-dory. No replication. Huh, 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 huh. Server equip weapon. Okay, so let's take another look. Let's see. So one difference. Okay. One difference is they're passing in their weapon. Alright, I guess we can just try to mimic them even more. Yeah, I don't get it. Still nothing. Didn't really think that would work. Okay, so I think I'm going to have to go back and brush up on my replication a bit. Kind of remember how this all works. So I'm going to end the stream now, and next week I'll be sure to let you all know what I found out and how to fix it, how to do it right. But yeah, getting tired, so I'm probably not going to figure it out tonight. But I hope you guys are finding this useful. These aren't really. I didn't really envision these to be trainings as much as just kind of development sessions where you guys can come and watch us work. It might not always be me programming. It might be some other guys from the team doing stuff in Blender, level design. So we'll be switching it up, but I kind of just wanted it to be an opportunity for people to come by, see what we're doing, ask questions, and that'll be a big help. If you're asking questions, love to answer them. Help you guys out in any way we can. If you have specific questions you'd like to have a more like structured tutorial on, send me a message. You can send me a message through YouTube. You can tweet at me on Twitter at the Aristonaut. We're on Instagram as well as the Aristonaut. So, contact us any way you want with specific questions. And yeah, if your question calls for a more structured tutorial, I might do a pre-recorded video just so it's a little more cohesive and it's not me jumping around debugging things and trying to figure out what's going on. But thanks for watching and stay classy.